Yeah, getting a ticket sucks. Yes, I've had my share, and there's no magic bullet to guarantee you're not going to get one. But you can definitely control whether you talk yourself into one.
So this is Mike the Cop. I've actually covered this guy multiple times on my channel before. He's basically one of those social media cops who tries to get the public to feel more sympathetic toward law enforcement. And in this video, he's going to argue why we should be nice to the road pirates who go around extorting money from working class motorists. Let's get right into it.
We've all been there, driving along, and then right behind us, on come the red and blues, and that feeling in the pit of your stomach, and you know you're getting pulled over.
So Larkin Rose mentions this in one of his videos, but a lot of people don't fully appreciate what those red and blue lights actually mean. When a cop flips on those red and blue lights, what type of message do you think they're trying to convey to you? Do you think those lights mean, hey buddy, if you have a minute, I'd like to chat? Well, obviously they don't mean that, otherwise you'd be able to ignore them and keep driving. What those lights mean is pull over now or bad things will happen. And you all know that's what they mean. You might not think about it too much or consider it that way, but you all essentially know what those lights mean. It's the cop basically trying to tell you you're going to pull over now, or I'm going to call a bunch of my fellow gang members and make you pull over. You know, they'll put down spike strips to forcibly stop your car. They might do something called a pit maneuver, which is where they force your car to spin out and basically run you off the road. Those lights are basically a threat of violence. Now, if someone commits an actual crime with a victim, such as burglary or murder or something like that, then yes, obviously it would be justified to forcibly stop that person so that they face justice. But 90% of the time when cops threaten someone with those red and blue lights, it's over something dumb and trivial, like having an expired sticker on the back of your car. So I want people to fully appreciate what happens when a cop flips on those red and blue lights. It's basically the cops saying, I am willing to endanger you and other motorists on the road over a sticker.
Yeah, there's a wide variety of reasons for traffic stops. I mean, the motor vehicle code in Michigan is like this thick.
This, of course, raises the question, why exactly does it need to be that thick? Are there really that many different ways to endanger people with your motor vehicle? And I would take a leap of faith and say that a majority of what's in that book is dumb little victimless shit, like not having the right sticker on your license plate. I feel like the rules regarding motor vehicle operation don't really need to be all that complicated. In fact, realistically, we could probably condense that whole thing just down to like one page. Like, don't hit people with your car, don't hit other people's property with your car. There, that's all the more complicated your motor vehicle code needs to be.
There's a lot of reasons to pull people over.
The biggest reason, of course, is to raise revenue for the state.
And once you've been on the job a little while, you understand that there are some bigger fish to fry in that book versus some smaller ones.
Again, this raises the question why that book needs to be so thick in the first place. I mean, why not whittle the motor vehicle code down to those bigger fish to fry and not distract police officers by having them enforce a bunch of trivial bullshit? It's almost as if the Michigan State Legislature was planning to nickel and dime motorists rather than keep things safe for everybody.
But hey, we were all rookies once, if you're a police officer, and you could be getting pulled over by a rookie. You never know. As a training officer, I see these guys get excited about some of the smaller fish sometimes. Did you see this? No, what? This plate's expired. Alright? By a day! A day! Okay? Not on my watch, sir. Not on my watch. Whoa! Did you see that? The one car that just passed us? That's right. 37 in a 35. I mean, you get out of the academy and you're eager, you're ready to go, you get in that car, and you want to get out there and do the job.
This makes me question the type of person that gets attracted to this line of work. I mean, what kind of insecure douchebag do you need to be to get full-on excited about detaining, harassing, and extorting people on behalf of the state?
And sometimes, until you learn what the bigger things are, you take what you can get. Eventually what happens is you kind of settle into the job, and even in traffic enforcement, you learn how to navigate that world a little bit better.
Mike seems to be trying to imply that it's only rookie officers who become overzealous and go around pulling people over for trivial shit. But there are reasons that even a seasoned officer might decide to go after people for trivial nonsense. For example, they might have to meet a quota, or they might just straight up be a douchebag. For example, one time a cop pulled me over because he thought I was tailgating him, and I wasn't even that close to his vehicle. But he pulls me over, he starts acting like a condescending prick, and this guy ended up being the chief of the entire department. So yeah, it's not just rookies who pull people over for bullshit reasons.
That does not justify not renewing your license plate, not registering your vehicle.
So who exactly am I endangering by not having that sticker on my car? I mean, I could conceivably understand the argument for how certain other violations might endanger other motorists on the road, like speeding or DUI, but how is me not paying the state the $140 so they require for me to get that sticker, how is that hurting anybody? This just seems like another way for the state to nickel and dime people.
Not having insurance.
Automotive insurance is one of the biggest ripoffs there is. They'll use any excuse they can to jack up your premium, and then when you actually need their help, they give you the absolute bare minimum. And they know they can get away with it because you bastards in blue force us to use their service.
Driving over the speed limit.
Speed limits don't actually have anything to do with safety. They're actually a form of fuel rationing implemented during World War I. Since police departments and municipal governments like the extra bit of revenue they got from fines, the speed limit stuck around even after the war ended.
Pulling out of driveways without looking, running red lights.
But what if there's no oncoming traffic and the red light is taking forever? One time I was pulled over for driving through a red light. There wasn't any oncoming traffic, so the risk of me causing an accident was basically zero. Now, in most major urban areas, the intersections have induction loop sensors, so being stuck at a red light for long periods of time isn't such a problem. But if you're in a rural area, the red lights are usually on some kind of automatic timer, which means you could be waiting an eternity at a red light when there's no oncoming traffic. I remember back when I was in college, the campus was located in kind of a rural area, so I had to drive through a bunch of rural back roads to get to campus, and I remember waiting at all those lights, and I just remember sitting there thinking, there's no oncoming traffic, what the fuck am I waiting for? What especially pisses me off is when an intersection will have the red light cameras but no induction loop sensor, because then it's like, okay, you don't have the money to make the traffic lights work more efficiently to reduce wait times, but you do have the money to squeeze money out of motorists. If you have the money to install a red light camera, you have the money to install an induction loop.
Sliding through stop signs.
So you may have heard of something called a rolling stop. This is basically when someone slows down at a stop sign without coming to a complete stop. And yes, you can get a ticket for it. Why exactly? I have no idea. It doesn't take that long to determine whether or not there's oncoming traffic. And presumably if there was oncoming traffic, the person would have come to a complete stop. So again, this seems like another excuse for the government to squeeze money out of people.
None of that. I've seen some horrific accidents, including some fatal accidents, from excessive speed and all those violations.
So you're not going to provide any examples or explain how the violations of the motor vehicle code are in fact what caused these accidents? Because remember, you can get pulled over for dumb trivial shit. What fatal accident was caused by somebody not having the right sticker on their license plate?
So traffic laws are important to enforce.
There are countries out there such as Germany and Jamaica, which not only have more lenient traffic laws than the US, but also lower traffic fatalities. A big reason for this is that a lot of these so-called traffic laws end up either distracting drivers by having them stare at their speedometer instead of the road, or they give drivers a false sense of security. Like they don't feel the need to look both ways before entering an intersection because that magic government traffic light will let them know when it's safe to proceed.
And part of each department's job is to provide a solution to the citizens.
Speed enforcement doesn't provide that effective of a solution, however. The biggest reason for that is simple psychology. People will naturally drive whatever speed they feel comfortable at. People will typically only drive the speed limit if they know that a police officer is watching. Otherwise, they'll drive whatever speed they feel comfortable with. This is why in certain neighborhoods where excessive speed does pose an actual danger to people, they tend to use things like speed bumps and other traffic calming devices, since these are generally more effective at controlling the speed at which people drive.
That are hiring you.
Hey Mike, the citizens don't hire you. The government hires you using money stolen from the citizens. A lot of us, if we had a choice in the matter, would probably tell you bastards in blue to go get a real job. Go contribute to the voluntary market to earn an income just like the rest of us have to.
To serve and protect them.
If you want to serve and protect people so dang badly, then I say quit government police and join private security.
And so if they have speeders down their street, and you're assigned to enforce that speed down there.
You know, funny how I never see cops assigned to enforce speed in places that are actually dangerous to drive fast. You know, like residential neighborhoods, construction sites, school zones. Every time I've been pulled over for speeding, it was either on a highway, which are specifically built and designed to be driven fast on, or some rural back road where the chances of getting into an accident are basically zero. In places where it is actually dangerous to drive fast, they're more likely to use, like I mentioned before, traffic calming devices. But hey, they don't raise revenue for the state.
Sometimes that's going to result in a lot more tickets than it would otherwise.
Yeah, especially if your neighborhood happens to have a lot of black people in it.
but it's not necessarily because the officer thinks you're a bad person.
Cops can and often do write tickets for personal reasons. This is because the Supreme Court has over the years given traffic cops a lot of power to leverage over other people at their own discretion. From allowing pretextual stops to the motor vehicle exception to the Fourth Amendment, so a cop can basically stop your car and search it if they feel like it. All of this gives cops a lot of power they could potentially use against someone for personal reasons if they felt like it.
And it's not just because the police love giving tickets.
If cops don't enjoy writing traffic tickets, then why do they basically turn their nose up at any suggestion people make to make traffic enforcement more fair, such as mounting cameras on top of radar devices so that it can be identified which vehicle the radar was pointed at when the speed was being taken, or getting rid of the motor vehicle exception to the Fourth Amendment, or having traffic court be open on weekends so that people don't have to waste their vacation time to fight a bogus traffic ticket.
It's certainly not because I'm getting a bonus check for the number of tickets I write.
Cops get incentivized to write tickets, even if they don't directly get paid a bonus. We know that police departments implement quota systems and certain perks for officers to write more tickets. It's not a secret. Everyone knows this.
Holy crap. If that was the case, I'd write a lot more tickets.
So Mike here basically just admitted that, given the opportunity, he would abuse his power for personal gain. Cops are such wonderful, outstanding people, aren't they?
But it's not. Regardless of what you think about traffic laws, or which ones should be enforced more and which ones should be enforced less.
Quite honestly, I think they all should be enforced less, because there's simply no data or proof to show that any of this enforcement does anything to make the roads any safer. I mean, if anything, all you're doing is just going around and distracting motorists with your flashing red and blue lights.
That's not really the point of this video. The point of this video is to talk about getting a ticket versus getting a warning. So the first key, just to be very, very clear, to not getting pulled over is to not violate the law in the first place.
Stop breaking the law, asshole!
The problem with this argument is that the traffic laws are so convoluted and insanely overly complicated that to expect the average person to obey them down to a T is simply unrealistic. If you drive above the speed limit, that's speeding and you can get pulled over for that. If you drive below the speed limit, that's inhibiting the flow of traffic and you can get pulled over for that. Even if you're driving right exactly at the speed limit, if the cop follows you for long enough, they can find a reason to pull you over. You remember how thick that motor vehicle code book was at the beginning of the video. There are lots of reasons a cop could pull you over if they wanted to.
But we're not perfect, and when we do get pulled over, what are you supposed to do to increase your odds that you're going to get a warning versus getting a ticket?
So it is true that we're all human and we all make mistakes at the end of the day. That being said, it's not always the driver who makes the mistake. Sometimes the mistake is made on behalf of the officer. Some common examples of mistakes made by police officers during traffic stops are not properly calibrating the speed detection device or holding it properly while using it, therefore the device registers an inaccurate speed, and misidentifying the vehicle involved in the infraction. Now, the reason why this is important we'll go into further later in the video.
But let's just assume that the reason you got pulled over was you violated some traffic law.
You can still get pulled over without having violated any traffic laws. Like I mentioned before, the officer could have failed to calibrate the speed detection device properly, failed to have held it steady, misidentified the vehicle involved in the infraction, or even straight up make up a reason to pull you over. There's quite a few audit the audit videos where the police officer basically just pulls a reason out of their ass for making a traffic stop. And what are you gonna do? Fight the citation? Hope you got the vacation time for it at work, because traffic court is not open on the weekends.
Okay? When that happens, it's really, really simple. Be polite, be honest. There's got to be something more to that. There's got to be some type of tip or trick. No. There's not.
So what Mike is doing here is basically giving legal advice. He's giving instructions on how to handle a specific legal issue, i.e. dealing with an encounter with a police officer. Now, Mike, as far as I'm aware, isn't an attorney licensed to practice law anywhere in the country, so he shouldn't really be doing this. On top of that, as a police officer, Mike sort of has a personal bias in the issue at hand. Of course, I'm not saying this to suggest that Mike is a bad person. I'm not trying to dunk on him. I'm sure he has good intentions here. I'm just saying get your legal advice from an actual lawyer.
Does that mean I'm going to get out of a ticket if I'm just polite and honest? No, maybe not.
So why bother being nice to the cop then if it won't guarantee that I won't get a ticket? I can't tell you how many times I've been as nice as I possibly could to the cop and still ended up getting a ticket. In fact, I feel like you could make a Pascals Wager type argument here. If you're nice to the cop that pulls you over, you might get a ticket, you might get a warning, you don't know. However, if you're rude and belligerent to the cop that pulled you over, you still have a chance of getting a warning or a ticket, but at least you'll definitely be getting back at the asshole who's threatening you with violence.
Again, there's a lot of circumstances about traffic enforcement that go beyond just what the officer wants and what the driver wants. Sometimes there's more at work than just that. And again, that's something that could be a conversation for a later date.
One very big reason that a police officer may decide to give you a citation instead of a warning is your driving record. The more infractions you have on your record, the more likely it is that you'll get a ticket. The reason that this is unfair is because your driving record doesn't specify how likely it is that you are endangering other people on the road. It only says what the infraction you were being pulled over for was. So if someone has 5 speeding citations on their record, even if they were only going slightly over the speed limit during each of those citations, their driving record is going to make them look like some kind of crazy maniac driver, and they're basically guaranteed to get a citation every time they get pulled over. And this is kind of a vicious cycle because that adds another citation to the record, almost as if this entire system is about squeezing money out of people and not encouraging safer driving.
But yeah, being polite can go a long way. You see, when I pull someone over for violating a traffic law, my goal is to help them not do that again. That's really the goal of all law enforcement, is to enforce the law in a way so that people's behavior change and they obey the law.
So, Mike, what's more important to you, that people drive safely or in accordance with the law? Now, some of you might be thinking right now, well, hold on a second, aren't those two one and the same? Not always. There are some instances in which it is actually safer to violate the traffic laws than to obey them. I'll give you some examples. Suppose that you're driving down the highway and all the vehicles around you are driving a speed that's faster than the speed limit. By driving at a slower speed, you're actually impeding the flow of traffic, which can be more dangerous than actually speeding. Another example is that in some neighborhoods, it's actually not safe to come to a complete stop at a stop sign. There are some neighborhoods out there where if your vehicle stops for even a split second, your car gets jacked. Which brings me back to the issue at hand. Mike, in a situation where driving safely and driving in accordance with the law are at odds with each other, which one for you wins out?
That they don't violate someone else's rights.
There are only 2 ways to violate someone else's rights with a motor vehicle. That is to hit someone or hit their property. That's it. All the dumb little victimless bullshit that the state tries to nickel and dime people for does not count.
That they don't put other people at risk on the road.
But there's no data to show that these dumb little infractions put people at risk on the road. Countries with more lenient traffic laws than the US have lower traffic fatality rates. As a matter of fact, what exactly is it that you bastards in blue are doing when you distract everyone with those red and blue flashing lights and force people off the road because they wouldn't stop over a sticker, if not putting people at risk on the road?
So that's the simple point of it all. My goal really isn't to inconvenience your day. My goal really isn't to give you a ticket. My goal really isn't to upset you. My goal is to simply get you to change whatever behavior caused you to speed, to not pay attention when you were changing lanes, etc. In other words, my goal when I stop you is ultimately to just give you a warning. That's what I'm hoping actually happens.
And you know what? I'm sure that may very well be the case for you, Mike. It may very well be the case that Mike here has good intentions when he pulls people over. He just wants them to learn to drive safer, and that's good on him. But that doesn't mean that's going to be the attitude of other officers. Nor does it take away from the fact that traffic enforcement as a whole is corrupt as hell, and largely based on extorting money out of people.
So being polite, that builds a bridge real quick with the officer that's pulling you over.
So yeah, road pirates who go around pulling people over, violently trying to extort money from them, do not deserve politeness. Now granted, they probably will still get politeness, because, people will be scared of being killed by a douchebag on a power trip, but they don't fucking deserve niceness. They deserve to be treated like the marauding scoundrels that they are. Larkin Rose discusses this in one of his videos, but when you're nice to the agents of the state, when they're going around being thugs to people, it's almost as if you're giving them your blessing, like you're telling them you approve of what they're doing. We really ought to be being mean to these bastards, if for no other reason so that they quit and get real jobs and leave us the fuck alone.
At least, if you can be polite and he can be professional, or she, or non-binary, what do they call? Oh, whatever. At least you can communicate with some sense of ease. If the officer's being professional and listening to you, and you're being polite and listening to him, then we're good.
But what if the cop isn't being nice to me? Should I still be nice back to them? I can't tell you how many times I've been pulled over by some douchebag on a power trip with this really condescending attitude. In fact, just recently I was pulled over for going slightly over the speed limit, and the power trippy douchebag who pulled me over was acting like I was some kind of terrorist. Like, he had his gun drawn, he was ordering me to stick my hands out the window and everything. If you're not going to be polite to me, then why the fuck should I be polite back to you? Like, I don't give a fuck about your badge. You're not entitled to politeness from me. me just because you have a badge.
The real key is being honest.
So now we get to the part of the video where Mike gives some really bad advice. Like, you do not want to follow his advice here.
If I stop someone and say, the reason I stopped you is because you rolled that stop sign back there, and they say, no, I didn't, and then I'll be like, well, that's why I pulled you over. I'm watching this intersection, and I watched you do it, and it's actually on video.
I want to briefly discuss the use of video in traffic enforcement since Mike mentioned it. There's been a rapid increase in the use of photography and video technologies in traffic enforcement over the past few years. And the reason for this is more or less obvious. The state gets to squeeze money out of people without having to pay anyone to enforce the tickets. And you've likely seen these cameras before. Usually they're intersections to catch people rolling through a red light or a stop sign. In some cities you might even see speed cameras that can detect when people drive too fast. Now, the way these cameras are supposed to work is that a human police officer is supposed to observe the footage captured by the camera, and then, based on what the officer observes in the footage, the officer issues the citation. Now, the reason for this is that the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution guarantees to a criminal defendant the right to confront and cross-examine witnesses. Because there's no way to call a camera into court and ask it questions, you're not supposed to have the cameras automatically issue the tickets, but in spite of that, most of the time that's what happens.
No, it's not. I didn't do that. Well, now we have a problem, because now you're not acknowledging that you weren't paying attention, or that you did it on purpose because you didn't think anybody was looking, or whatever the excuse is, okay? No one likes excuse makers.
Just because someone might happen to disagree with what a police officer observes doesn't automatically make them an excuse maker. Again, there are reasons why an officer's observation of what happened may be different from what actually happened. Perhaps the officer wasn't paying attention when the infraction happened. Perhaps the officer mistook your vehicle for a similar looking one. The officer's view of the intersection could have been obstructed. Just because someone wants to choose to exercise their right to due process and challenge the accusation of the officer doesn't automatically mean they're just making excuses.
Are there valid reasons that you may have done something wrong, including, I just wasn't paying attention? Yeah, there are. Tell the truth. Just be honest. Yep, I was running late for work, and I know I was going too fast. I shouldn't be, but I decided to do it anyway.
So this is very bad advice right here. You do not want to do this. Because what Mike is telling you to do right here basically amounts to giving a confession to a police officer, which can be used against you in court and is damn near impossible to fight. You actually want to do the exact opposite during a traffic stop. You want to keep your mouth shut and not say a word. In most states, the only thing you have to do during a traffic stop is hand the officer your license and registration. You don't have to say shit, you don't have to tell them shit, you don't have to answer any questions. Remember that the suspect in a criminal case has zero obligation to aid in their investigation against them. If they want to bust you for a traffic violation, I say make them do all the work. Don't make it easier for them.
Well, isn't that refreshing? Oh, you see, I got these new tires. Oh, yeah, my speedometer. It's new digital display. I don't quite get it yet. The numbers seem so different. Oh, I got a call from my friend, Marge, next door, and she said that it sounded like my dog got out, so I was just trying to get home super fast.
Well, I mean, that last one sounds like kind of a legitimate excuse. Like, yeah, if one of your pets or family members is in some type of peril, then yeah, that kind of takes priority over your arbitrary politician decrees.
All you're doing when you're being dishonest and just making excuses is indicating to the officer that a warning isn't going to help you remember to drive better in the future.
But what if it's the officer who's being dishonest? Because remember, cops get a lot more privileges to lie and be deceptive than average citizens. I mentioned this in a previous video, but in most states, a police officer can actually just kind of sort of eyeball what speed you were going. They don't have to use an actual speed detection device. So there would literally be nothing stopping the cop from straight up just lying about how fast you were going. A cop could straight up just say you were going 100 when you're actually doing 70, and what are you going to do about it? His word is law.
So be polite, be honest, and it is what it is. Again, sometimes you're going to get a ticket no matter what. Because sometimes the violation, it's undeniable, and a ticket can result. And there's a lot of factors involved in that. So many that we really can't cover it in one little simple video.
Again, if being polite to the douchebag who pulled me over isn't going to guarantee that I get out of the ticket, then why should I even bother? Especially considering that I don't particularly feel like being nice to the douchebag in the first place who's threatening me with violence if I don't hand over a bunch of money to the state.
If you want to increase the chances of a warning over a ticket, follow the law, be polite, be honest. It's simple. Because sometimes I'll be walking up to a car with the full hope and anticipation of a quick conversation, hoping to make them aware of what the mistake was, what the violation was, and send them on their way. Because a lot of times I'm just thinking about, am I going to get a taco or am I going to get Chinese? And let's get this over with. No, that's not good enough for some people. Some people have to go and open their mouth.
Well, yeah, people have the right to voice their indignation at being forcibly stopped and extorted. I mean, I personally recommend keeping your mouth shut during a traffic stop, but if someone wants to voice how they feel about it, that's exactly their First Amendment right. The First Amendment protects your right to criticize the government, and especially police officers.
Afternoon, sir.
Why are you pulling me over?
That's actually a perfectly valid question to ask during a traffic stop, since, if you're being detained for a crime, you have a right to know what crime you're being detained for. As a matter of fact, one of the first things you should do during a traffic stop is figure out why exactly it is you're being pulled over. Because one of the little mind games that cops like to play is they like to ask you why you think you were pulled over. This is a clever way that they try to fish confessions out of people. Don't fall for it.
Stopped you for running the red light back there.
You have no right. You're pulling me over when you could be catching murderers out there. There's rapists out.
These were my exact thoughts when I was pulled over on the New Jersey Turnpike one day. I was thinking, we're right near Camden where actual crime was happening, and this is where law enforcement resources are being directed. It's almost as if cops are a bunch of cowards who would rather go and harass people for victimless crimes than deal with actual crime.
Out there. Don't you have something better to do? Like go pepper spray some college kids?
Yeah, not seeing what that has to do with the red light.
So it's pretty obvious what Mike is doing right here. He created this whole caricature to try and strawman people who criticize traffic enforcement as a bunch of lunatics who just complain and whine like little babies. Never mind the more legitimate criticisms against traffic enforcement, such as that it doesn't actually keep roads safer, or that it disproportionately targets the poor and middle class.
I bet you're racist. You look racist.
So groups like Black Lives Matter and Antifa are really not helping the whole police brutality and abuse of power issue when they try to make it a race issue. It's not a race issue, guys. It affects everyone of every skin color.
Are you finished?
You gotta make your quota, huh? I know you gotta make your quota.
Police departments have quotas for tickets, okay? We all know this. They like to pretend that they don't and keep it a secret, but I mean, come on now. We all know they have quotas.
Whatever. You are harassing me, sir. You are harassing me.
Yeah, basically, traffic stops are basically harassment. Like I said before, it's someone basically threatening you with violence to make you pull over and extort money from you. We call them road pirates for a reason. And imagine if it wasn't a cop doing it. Imagine if it was just a plain Jane ordinary citizen who went around stopping people with flashing lights and forcing them to hand over money. It would be seen as the illegitimate harassment that it is. It's only considered legitimate because cops are seen to have these special powers that we mere mortals don't.
That's right. I pay my taxes. I pay your salary.
Apparently cops hate hearing this. They hate being told by everyone that they pay their salary. Well, I mean, it's true. Your salary is confiscated from the rest of us by force whether we want to or not. So I guess if you don't like hearing it, then maybe get a real job in the voluntary market.
You could talk to my attorney about this. I'm gonna call my attorney about this.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. If you do happen to have an attorney on retainer during a traffic stop, it might be a good idea to give them a call.
You know what? I'm gonna let you keep talking, and I'm just gonna go back to my car. I'll be right back.
Watch out for the dog poop. Don't step in the dog poop, you wiener.
All right, here's your citation, sir.
Siri, are you seriously giving me a ticket right now? What is it for?
Well, quite honestly, because you're a raging butthole.
Cops are willing to abuse their power against someone who exercised their First Amendment rights in a way that hurt their feelings. I know, shocker, right?
And you ran the red light. But mostly because you're a butthole.
Hey Mike, have you noticed how most normal people don't have this problem? Like people who don't go around pirating people on the highway don't have to deal with people being buttholes to them. It's almost as if when you act like a butthole to other people, they act like a butthole to you in return. Huh.
That is unprofessional.
And what that type of attitude reveals is that you actually don't have any regard for others in the way that you conduct yourselves on the road. What it indicates is that you have no respect for those who are out there trying to keep others safe by enforcing those laws.
Well, Mike, that's because I don't have any respect for road pirates. And I don't respect road pirates because they don't deserve respect. They go around threatening people with violence, extorting money from working class and poor motorists to enrich greedy, power-happy politicians. I don't respect road pirates because they don't deserve respect. They deserve every bit of scorn that they get. Until next time, this has been Philosophossum making stupidity play dead. Everyone take care.